Park that rust bucket, or the next fine doubles. That was what HOA President Vanessa told me while pointing at the muddy snow tracks beside the entrance to Briar Ridge. Those tracks were there because, 6 hours earlier, I had cleared 14 inches of snow from the only road leading up their hill. For 12 winters, I had opened that road before ambulances, school buses, or delivery trucks could reach it. I never charged the residents $1, but Vanessa called my plow an unauthorized commercial vehicle, accused me of damaging the neighborhood's appearance, and handed me a $7,500 fine. Then she ordered me to stop driving it through the community. So I didn't yell. I didn't threaten her. I signed the notice, sent the board one written safety warning, and parked the plow inside my barn. What Vanessa didn't know was that Briar Ridge had a 17% grade, 2 frozen switchbacks, and only one machine in the area heavy enough to clear it safely. 3 nights later, the biggest storm in decades arrived. By sunrise, their road had completely vanished. And when county rescue crews asked why the only qualified plow had been ordered off the hill, I still had Vanessa's signed notice in my coat pocket. Vanessa had been waiting beside the stone entrance sign when I brought the plow down the hill that morning. She wore a white coat, polished boots, and the gold HOA badge she had ordered after becoming president 3 months earlier. 2 board members stood behind her, while she photographed the slush and tire marks along the shoulder. "You damaged HOA landscaping," she said. I looked past her at the road I had just cleared. It was black, salted, and open. The school bus had already made it through. So had an ambulance taking Mr. Halpern to his dialysis appointment. "The blade pushed snow off the pavement," I said. "That's what kept your road open." Vanessa handed me a violation notice. The amount printed at the bottom was $7,500. The listed offenses included unauthorized commercial activity, damage to common landscaping, excessive vehicle noise, and operating heavy equipment without board approval. I read every line before looking back at her. "Are you ordering me to stop plowing this road?" She smiled as though she had been waiting for me to ask. "Effective immediately. We've hired professionals." Then she leaned closer and lowered her voice. "People like you don't get to ignore community standards just because you own an old truck." I signed only to confirm that I had received the notice. Then I wrote the time beside my name and photographed every page. Vanessa thought I was surrendering. What she didn't know was that 3 professional contractors had already refused to touch that hill. I had spent 27 years clearing county roads through mountain storms. Briar Ridge was never part of my official route, but I knew that hill better than anyone. The road climbed at a 17% grade, narrowed through 2 frozen switchbacks, and had no safe place for a standard truck to turn around. My plow was not pretty. It was an old municipal machine I had rebuilt myself with reinforced chains, extra ballast over the rear axle, a narrower articulated blade, and heated hydraulic lines that would not freeze at 20 below. It looked rough because it had done real work. 12 winters earlier, my wife, Ellen, woke before dawn with crushing pain in her chest. Snow had fallen all night. I cleared the hill while my neighbor, Tom Alvarez, called the ambulance. Because the road was open, paramedics reached our farmhouse in time. Ellen survived that heart attack. It gave us 6 more years together that I would not have had otherwise. After she passed, I kept clearing the road. I did it for the school bus, for the older residents, and for people like Marjorie Bell, whose oxygen deliveries could not wait for better weather. I never sent the HOA an invoice. Most residents understood what the plow meant. Vanessa only saw chipped orange paint, diesel smoke, and a machine that did not match the image she wanted for Briar Ridge. To her, it was an eyesore. To me, it was the reason my wife had made it home from the hospital. Vanessa had been HOA president for less than 3 months when the notices started. The first one complained about the color of my barn. The second called the fuel tank beside my workshop a visual hazard. Then came warnings about stacked tire chains, work lights, diesel noise, and the snowplow parked behind my garage. My farmhouse had been there 20 years before Briar Ridge existed. The original county plat showed that my land sat outside the HOA boundary, but Vanessa kept using phrases like shared community appearance and neighborhood character. She never said she wanted control. She said she was protecting property values. At the next board meeting, she displayed photographs of my equipment on a projector. Most had been taken from the road with a long camera lens. "This kind of industrial clutter affects every homeowner," she said. I stood at the back of the room in muddy boots while she spoke about me as if I were not there. Tom asked whether she had checked the property map. Vanessa ignored him. Then she announced that the board was reviewing professional snow removal options and would no longer depend on what she called informal arrangements with unlicensed residents. That was when I noticed the man sitting beside her. His name was Derek Crane. He owned a small landscaping company, drove a polished pickup fitted with a lightweight plow, and happened to be Vanessa's brother-in-law. 3 days later, the board scheduled a vote on a $68,000 winter maintenance contract. That was when I understood. Vanessa had not fined me because of the tracks. She was clearing the road for someone else. The contract packet was 43 pages long, but the important claim was buried near the back. Summit Green Landscaping promised 24-hour snow service, priority emergency access, and commercial-grade equipment suitable for mountain conditions. I knew that last part was false. Derek owned 2 landscaping pickups. Each had a lightweight straight blade designed for parking lots and residential driveways. Neither truck had sufficient ballast, reinforced chains, or a blade narrow enough to work through Briar Ridge's upper switchback. I raised my hand during public comment. "What is the maximum grade those trucks are rated to clear under load?" Derek looked at Vanessa before answering. "We've handled difficult properties before." "That wasn't my question." Vanessa tapped her microphone. "This meeting is not a technical seminar, Caleb." I walked forward and placed a county road profile on the table. It showed the grade, the turn radius, and the section where ice formed above the drainage culvert. 3 companies had inspected the road during previous winters. All 3 had declined the job unless the HOA widened the switchbacks and installed a turnaround pad. Vanessa did not mention any of that. Instead, she called for the vote. 4 board members approved the $68,000 contract. Tom voted against it. Before leaving, I requested the competing bids and the board's conflict of interest disclosure. The secretary searched through the file twice. There was no disclosure showing that Derek was Vanessa's brother-in-law. That told me this was no longer just about an unreasonable fine. Vanessa was risking an entire neighborhood to justify a contract that benefited her own family. The next morning, I sent the entire board a written safety warning. I did not accuse Vanessa of corruption. I did not mention her relationship with Derek. I kept the letter technical. I listed the road's 17% grade, both switchbacks, the frozen drainage culvert, and the absence of a safe turnaround point above the entrance. I attached photographs from previous storms and copies of the 3 contractors' refusal letters. Then I included the latest weather forecast. A major winter system was expected within 72 hours. The first estimate called for 18 inches of snow. Mountain winds could push drifts twice that deep across the upper hill. I explained that my machine was privately owned, properly weighted, and modified specifically for that road. I also stated that, because of Vanessa's violation notice, I would stop operating on HOA property until the board rescinded its order and confirmed its insurance coverage in writing. My final paragraph recommended that the HOA arrange county-approved emergency access before the storm arrived. Vanessa answered less than 20 minutes later. "Your services are neither requested nor authorized. Summit Green will handle all winter maintenance. Further operation of your vehicle on HOA property will result in towing and additional fines." She copied every board member. I printed the email, saved the original digital file, and placed both copies beside the $7,500 violation notice. Then I serviced the hydraulic lines, checked the chains, and drove the plow into my barn. For the first time in 12 winters, I closed the doors before a storm. I did exactly what Vanessa had ordered. Before parking the machine, I photographed the odometer, blade, chains, and all 4 tires. I recorded the time in my maintenance log and pointed a security camera toward the locked barn doors. If Vanessa later claimed I had secretly used the plow, or refused to help without warning, I wanted the record to be unquestionable. By afternoon, neighbors had begun stopping at my gate. Marjorie Bell asked whether I was preparing for the storm. I showed her the written order, but I did not tell her to confront the board. I'm not allowed on their road, I said. Make sure your generator is fueled, and call me if you need anything. Tom was less patient. He attended an emergency board meeting that evening and asked Vanessa what would happen if Derek's trucks failed. They won't, she said. Tom reminded her that the upper switchback became solid ice whenever wind crossed the ridge. Vanessa accused him of spreading panic on my behalf. An hour later, she posted an announcement to the community page. Briar Ridge has secured superior professional snow service. Residents should ignore unsolicited warnings from unauthorized operators. I took a screenshot. Then the Weather Service upgraded the storm warning. The forecast rose from 18 inches to nearly 3 feet, with wind gusts strong enough to create 6-foot drifts across exposed slopes. I forwarded the new forecast to the board without adding a single word. Vanessa replied by reminding me that entering HOA property with my plow would result in towing. Outside my barn, the first flakes began to fall. Inside, the only machine capable of climbing their hill sat silent beneath a canvas cover. By 7 that evening, 6 inches of wet snow covered the lower road. Derek arrived with 2 pickups, a salt spreader, and 3 employees wearing new reflective jackets. Vanessa stood near the entrance, filming them with her phone, as though the contract had already proved itself. The first truck made it halfway to the lower switchback. Then its rear tires began spinning. Derek backed down, added chains, and tried again with the blade raised. He reached the turn, lowered the blade, and immediately lost traction. The truck slid sideways until its passenger door struck the guardrail. No one was injured, but the impact bent the blade mount and left the truck blocking half the road. The second pickup tried to push around it. Its engine temperature climbed before it reached the same turn. The driver stopped when steam began rising from beneath the hood. From my farmhouse, I could see their warning lights flashing through the snowfall. Derek called me at 8:30. He did not apologize. He asked how much weight I carried over the rear axle and whether I would tow his truck free. I told him the specifications were already included in the report Vanessa had dismissed. Then, I reminded him that I had been ordered not to enter HOA property. Within minutes, Vanessa called. "This is becoming a safety issue," she said. It was a safety issue 72 hours ago. She demanded that I bring out the plow while leaving both the fine and towing order in effect. I refused. Not because I wanted anyone trapped, but because sending a 40,000-pound machine onto a blocked, uninspected road without written authorization would make me responsible for whatever happened next. By 10 o'clock, Derek had abandoned both attempts. The wind strengthened, and the tracks his trucks had left disappeared almost immediately. By midnight, snow was blowing sideways across the ridge. The lower entrance sign disappeared first. Then the guardrail vanished beneath a drift. Snow filled the switchbacks faster than Derek's abandoned tire marks could show where the pavement had been. At 5 the next morning, I walked to the edge of my property. There was no road anymore. From the entrance to the upper hill, Briar Ridge had become one unbroken white slope. Several cars were buried to their windows. Vanessa's white SUV sat crooked near the clubhouse, its rear wheels spinning uselessly. My phone rang before sunrise. "You need to clear this immediately," Vanessa said. "Has the board rescinded the towing order?" "This is an emergency." That wasn't my question. She accused me of endangering residents by refusing to help. I reminded her that she had prohibited me from entering HOA property, even after receiving my written safety warning. If I drove a 40,000-pound plow onto a buried road with 2 disabled trucks blocking the switchback, I could injure someone or destroy the culvert. "I need written authorization," I said. "The fine canceled, the towing order withdrawn, and the road inspected before I move that machine." Vanessa refused. She wanted the plow, but she did not want the paper trail admitting she had been wrong. Then another call came through. It was Tom. Marjorie Bell's power had failed. Her oxygen concentrator was running on its last backup battery, and no ambulance could reach the hill. That was the moment this stopped being about Vanessa's pride. I could not take the plow onto HOA property, but Marjorie still needed help. My farmhouse shared an old service boundary with the upper side of Briar Ridge. The route was too narrow for an ambulance, but my tracked utility vehicle could cross it without touching the buried HOA road. I loaded a portable generator, 2 oxygen cylinders, blankets, and a medical radio into the back. Tom met me at the fence wearing his retired fire department gear. We reached Marjorie's house 11 minutes before her backup battery failed. While Tom connected the generator, I radioed Deputy Lena Brooks, who coordinated winter emergencies for the county sheriff's office. She established a rescue point at the bottom of the hill and sent a medic up our service path on foot. Marjorie stabilized quickly, but the county still had an entire neighborhood of trapped residents and no safe vehicle access. Deputy Brooks found Vanessa near the buried entrance. "Who normally clears this road?" she asked. Vanessa pointed toward my farmhouse. "He does, but he abandoned us during an emergency." I heard the exchange over Tom's radio, so I walked down carrying the folder I had prepared before the storm. I handed Brooks the $7,500 violation notice, the towing threat, my technical warning, and Vanessa's email stating that my services were neither requested nor authorized. Brooks read every page twice. "You warned the board this road could close? 72 hours ago. And you were ordered not to operate?" In writing. Vanessa tried to interrupt, but Brooks raised one hand. Then she looked toward the 2 disabled landscaping trucks blocking the switchback. "Who hired that company?" No one answered. I placed the unsigned conflict of interest form on top of the contract. For the first time since the storm began, Vanessa stopped giving orders. By 9 that morning, the county had turned the entrance into an emergency command post. Residents gathered behind the barricades while deputies, paramedics, and road officials examined the buried hill. A local news crew arrived after hearing that more than 40 homes had been cut off by snow. Deputy Brooks asked Vanessa to explain the maintenance plan. Vanessa claimed the storm had exceeded every forecast and that I had suddenly withdrawn a service the community depended on. I opened my folder. "The forecast was attached to my warning," I said. "So were the contractor refusals and the road specifications." Brooks held up Vanessa's email. "And this was your response?" Vanessa's face tightened. Before she could answer, Derek stepped forward and admitted his company had never cleared a road that steep. He said Vanessa had assured him my safety concerns were exaggerated and that the contract was guaranteed. One of the board members looked at him. "How do you know Vanessa?" Derek hesitated. "She's my wife's sister." The crowd went silent. Tom handed Brooks the meeting minutes. They showed that Vanessa had introduced the contract, recommended Summit Green, and voted to approve it without disclosing the relationship. Then the HOA's insurance representative arrived. After reviewing the warning letters and the damaged trucks, she informed the board that coverage could be challenged because it had ignored a documented hazard and hired an undisclosed related party without verifying its equipment. Vanessa pointed at me. "He is still refusing to clear the road." Brooks turned toward her. "No, he is following the written order you issued." That sentence ended the argument. Residents began demanding that the fine be canceled and Vanessa removed from control of the emergency response. The remaining board members called an immediate vote. Vanessa lost every vote, including the 2 members who had stood behind her when she fined me. Then the board president pro tem looked at me. "Caleb, tell us what you need before that plow moves." I did not ask for an apology. I asked for documents. First, the board had to cancel the $7,500 fine and every related violation. Second, it had to withdraw the towing order and confirm that my farmhouse, barn, and equipment were outside HOA architectural control. Third, the county had to inspect the buried road before I moved the plow. Derek's damaged truck was still blocking part of the lower switchback, and I would not risk pushing 40,000 pounds of steel into an unseen obstacle. Finally, I asked the board to place the money from Vanessa's canceled family contract into a winter emergency fund. No one argued. The board approved every condition in writing. Deputy Brooks signed the emergency access authorization, and county crews pulled Derek's truck away from the guardrail. I returned to my barn. When the doors opened, residents standing near the entrance began to cheer. The old orange machine started on the second turn. I let the engine warm, locked the chains into position, and lowered the articulated blade. The first drift reached above the headlights. I entered it slowly. Snow rolled away from the blade in walls taller than the cab. At the first switchback, I shortened the blade angle and used the rear ballast to hold traction. At the second, I cleared only half the width, backed down, and made another pass. It took nearly 4 hours to reopen the entire hill. There were no speeches, no victory lap. Just diesel, steel, and experience doing what a $68,000 contract could not. When I reached the upper homes, Marjorie stood behind her window with the oxygen line beneath her nose. She raised one hand. I raised mine back. Behind the plow, the road slowly reappeared. And beside the stone entrance, the muddy tire tracks Vanessa had fined me for returned with it. Vanessa resigned before the recall vote. The county opened a review of the undisclosed family contract, and Summit Green returned the advance payment. The HOA canceled every violation against my property and adopted a rule requiring full disclosure whenever a board member had a personal connection to a contractor. I did not take over the board. I did not want Vanessa's chair. Instead, I helped Tom create a winter emergency plan. The neighborhood purchased 2 generators, reflective road markers, medical supply lockers, and a radio system that could continue operating during a power failure. The board offered me a permanent snow removal contract. I accepted on one condition. 2 younger residents had to train with me as backup operators. No community should depend entirely on one machine or one man, no matter how experienced he is. By the next winter, Briar Ridge was prepared. After the first snowfall, I cleared the hill before sunrise. When I passed the stone entrance, I noticed a new sign beside the road. Winter access, maintained by local operators. Below it, in smaller letters, someone had added, "Please do not complain about the tire tracks." I laughed for the first time in weeks. Vanessa believed authority came from fines, titles, and a gold badge. But authority does not keep an ambulance moving through a blizzard. Skill does. Preparation does. And sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the only one holding the road open.